Well, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for New Tracks Meetup. It's Saturday, April the 10th. Thanks so much for coming. We've got a great show for you. Hope you'll tell your friends about us and hope they can join us too. If you have not yet done so, I hope you'll register at our website, newtracksmodeling.com. And don't forget to confirm your registration by email so that you'll make sure that you can get all of the future notices and login information for our future Zoom meetings. The Build Along projects we have two new ones starting a week from today. Gaylord Gill and Randy Bosner in their Bar Mills one kit build, and Bob Farquhar and Dale Rush's Blair Line structure. Both of those are starting on April the 17th. So I hope that you'll be here for those, and I hope you'll build along with both of those gentlemen. Clark Cooney is doing his downtown deco, and Clark's going to have a special My Build session on April the 21st for those modelers who have built along with him. So Clark is coming to the conclusion here shortly of his build along, and I hope everybody has enjoyed it. I know I have. And thank you so much for participating with Clark and his project. Rick and Maureen Hunter are going to start their project of their 30-foot King Truss Bridge on May the 22nd show. So it's a little bit over a month away. Both of Bob Farquhar and Gaylord Gill's projects will have a special My Build for people who are building along with them on May the 29th show. So I hope that you can be here. And if you've built along with both of them or either of them, I hope you'll share what you've built with us. This September already is, I think, going to really be exciting. We have Bill Davis, who's going to build one of Steve Milley's rail scale models starting in September. And we've got Martin Breckbilt, MMR, building one of Leadville Designs kits starting in September. And we're trying to put together what I consider to really be a super build along. This will have 4 separate modelers building in 4 separate scales, the same kit from the same manufacturer. So you'll have a modeler building it in N scale, another modeler building it in HO, another modeler building it in S, and another modeler building it in O scale. The techniques, the skills that they use for the different scales, I think will become obvious as they build along their specific kit and their specific scale. And I think that may be of help to people who are trying to decide what scale they really want to build models in. And in model railroading, there is a difference between the size, the weight, the complexity of some of the model scales versus others. So I'm hoping that this is really going to be a benefit to a lot of people. And I think for the first time, it's going to really demonstrate what's involved in actually building exactly the same model, but doing it in a different scale. The next My Build that we have coming up, as I said, is April the 21st. And that specifically is for Clark Cooning's build along modelers to show what they have accomplished with the downtown deco kit. And I hope that a lot of them come out and actually show what they've been able to achieve, because it's in a medium that a lot of modelers have not modeled in before. And I really do appreciate both Downtown Deco and Clark for doing this specific program. After that, in May the 29th, we have the general open to everybody, My Build section. And we're also going to have special parts of that just for Bob Farquhar's build along, and then another one for Gaylord Gill and Randy Bosler's build along. Bar Mills, for that build along session, for the one that Gaylord Gill is doing, is offering a $25 credit to one modeler who will be drawn at random during the My Build section, where they come and they show the model that they actually built from his one kit. So I hope a lot of people will turn out for that. And I hope that we get a lot of people who built along with Greg Cassidy in the Conowingo model that hadn't finished it by the time we had that one build. I hope that they'll decide to come and to show us what their model looks like. So with those announcements said, I'd like to turn this over to Paul Thompson for his quick tips of the evening. Paul?
Great, thank you, Jim. I'm just going to shut myself off. Oh, there we go. And bring up the screen here. Okay, tonight I just thought I'd mention something that a lot of you probably know about, and that is a product called Grease'em by KD, and it's actually nothing more than powdered graphite, which you can buy at a hardware store or you can pick up. I happened to pick this up used at a train show, and you don't really need much of it. So this is what it comes in. Product number is 231, but frankly, I just put the KD on here as an example. However, that's not really the real tip, because if you only need a little bit of graphite to lube things up, such as couplers, etc., it can be had with a common ordinary pencil. And basically, an HB is a nice soft pencil, and you can get probably enough graphite on it for minor little applications such as couplers. When I'm putting couplers together, I rub a little bit top and bottom, and that just gives them a little bit more slide. Or you can do as KD says and pop in a puff of graphite. But the one thing to remember with graphite is it's electrically conductive. So if you draw a line, the electricity is going to flow on it through your pencil line. Just remember that, and it's a great lubricant. And as I say, an HB is probably the best thing that you can come up with, and that's basically my tip for the night, guys. Thank you.
Well, my gosh, you're just full of good information, Paul. Thank you so very much for taking the time to do this for each one of our shows. I'd also like to mention that the Pacific Coast region, PCR, is having their 2021 convention coming up in April. I believe it's April the 24th, but I'm not positive of that. If you'll go Google the PCR 2021 convention, you can register for it. It's free. It's going to be a trial, kind of a trial balloon for the upcoming national NMRA convention. And the way that they're structuring this PCR convention, as I understand it, is kind of a mini convention that the national is going to try to duplicate when they have their national convention later this year. So if you have a chance to do that, you can Google it, PCR 2021 convention. With that said, I'd like to turn to Clark Cooning for his build along of Downtown Deco. Clark?
Hi, guys. Let's head over to share screen, I guess. I don't need that, I don't think. All right.
So you're only planning on one computer to this week?
I'm only playing on one today.
All right.
Yeah. All right. So this is part 3 of the build along. And signs and doors we're going to look after. Now, as I mentioned on Wednesday, I ran out of ink when I was doing one of the little things on signs, and we'll talk about that. But I could do a whole hour clinic on just different signs and how to make them, and different methods that you can use your printer and your computer to make signs. So maybe we'll make that into a clinic one day, but we'll touch on it a little bit here. And in the next segment, I will go back and actually do our project sign, and then we'll finish it up with some details in the roof. All right, so signs on a structure are an important piece of scene development. They They can dictate the era, they can dictate your town, they can do all kinds of things. So signs are fairly important in model railroad layouts. And one of the things they also do is give direct and direction in the rail service structure. So if you're running an op session, you can look at the building and go, oh, that's where such and such building is, and that's what they do, and that's why I got to deliver that car there. Signs. So as I said, signs can give some structure identity. Here's a neat sign, the builder's one on the left. And of course, you've got the signs that sell products. And I love these old faded signs you can find. You can find them on the computer. You can find them in old little towns if they haven't been painted over. I used to do a sign clinic before that is basically on slides, so I'd have to revive that one. But with today's computers and that, it's a lot different to produce signs. So now we have metal signs, we have painted on signs, and we have wooden signs. So the metal signs are just that. They're a metal, or some of the older signs were ceramic. Then you have the painted on signs, which are fairly common. You know, they're just painted right on the brick. And then you have wood, and then a sign painter would actually paint or do whatever it was onto that piece of wood, and then it would be mounted onto a structure. There's signs that hang out, so stuff that comes off a building and tries to catch your eyes. There's the flat signs, again, that are just painted on. And of course, we have 3D signs that are lighted and try to draw your eye into the scene. And so signs tell a story. So in our first timer bar project, we've got it all painted, and I'm going to move my bar here so I can actually see what I've got here. Paper signs are included in the kit. So you can just cut out those signs, but I prefer a little bit different method, and we'll talk about that. So first thing is always copy what, I don't care if it's a plastic kit, a fancy kit like Downtown Deco where it's plaster, or a laser cut kit. Those sheets that they give you all the signage, make a photocopy of them and save them on your computer, because that way you have them. And sometimes, if you destroy a set, you've always can print off another set. So let's figure out what type of signs do we want on our structure. So do we want a metal sign, which actually stands off the brickwork? Or do we want it a painted on side, which is really painted into the brick? Or do we want a hanging structure, say out front of the building by the doorway? And in the case of this kit, they have basically painted on sign or brickwork signs, and they have a couple signs that do hang off the front, as you'll see in their instructions. So for metal signs, I like to use brochure paper. It's about 180 bond. And the bond is the thickness of the paper. And you can buy this at any Staples, or Michael's may have it, but any place that sells paper. For painted on signs, I like to use tissue paper. And the tissue is just like the stuff they use for stuffing gift bags. Excuse me, the real thin stuff. And you can buy that at the dollar store for almost nothing, and you'll have more sign material than you'll need. Now, for signs that like to hang off a building, I like to use sheet styrene and fit the sign onto the styrene and then cut it around. But then you have a much heavier sign. So again, for metal signs, you're just going to print off your signs on brochure paper. Apply any weathering to the sign before cutting it out. It makes it a lot easier when it's in a sheet and not cut out to apply weathering. It won't curl up, especially if you're using water-based products. And then you want to use a sharp blade and cut out the sign neatly. And then on the sign itself, you want to take a black marker, and on an angle to the back, you want to paint that white edge black. All right. So again, for the metal signs, we're just using the white, and I make sure it's matte brochure paper. You don't want to gloss on this. All right. And so for the metal signs, after I printed it, I use a little burnt umber for rust, and I usually take a sponge and I will dab it in and do a dry brush, or in this case, dry sponging. I will get as much paint off of that sponge as I can, and then just apply it to the sign very, very lightly until I get to the look I want. And then you can take a little thin black wash, and we talked about washes in the last installment, or even if you want to really fade it, you can use a white wash, and with a little white paint and very thin. Now, again, you want to get as much water off. It should be fairly dry, and you want to just go in one direction, which is downward. And then, as I mentioned before, we're going to use a marker to blacken the edge of that sign. So we have the printed sign, the weathered sign, and then the sign glued onto the building. You can just, and you'll see it's not our building because, as I said, I ran out of ink to do what I wanted to do. But you can see how that sign stands off the building a little bit in the last photo. Okay. And how you apply that, you're just going to put a little white glue on the building, and just rub it in with your finger. Now you can use canopy glue or white glue. And the other thing I like to use is transfer tape. If you have 3M transfer tape, that's the best, because the glue can seep through some papers. Now, with the heavy bond, it won't really come through that paper, and it'll just stick there nicely. Now, I learned this, the painted on brick signs with the tissue from a terrific modeler. Just one of the great guys of all times, in my opinion, is Jack Ellis at Bar Mills Models. And he uses tissue paper. And as I said, it's like the stuff you use for stuffing bags. So what he does, he cuts a piece of tissue paper slightly smaller than regular 8.5 by 11 sheet. I like to, again, use the brochure paper because it is thicker. And I just use some Scotch tape to tape the tissue onto the paper. And then I feed the tissue paper through my printer. And then I will just let the printer signs dry on the tissue paper. You don't have to wait a long time, maybe 20 minutes, but you want to make sure they're dry. Again, so we have the tissue paper you can buy at the dollar store. Buy some tape while you're there, because you'll never find it when you need it. And then just tape the tissue onto the regular sheet of paper. Now, you got to make sure when you insert the tissue paper in your printer, you do it properly. And most printers print on the down facing side. So check to see how your printer prints. But generally, it goes in and then comes up like this and is printed. So just make sure you get it right. I always check it. So this is the non-tissue side as I put right down. And you can see that I did it right, because the printing of all the different signs is on the tissue in the right proportion. So we're going to cut the sign from the tissue gently, because it is tissue. You have to be very careful. And then we're going to, again, apply full strength white glue. Just till the pages is fine. And then just put down your sign. Now, again, this is not the sign or the model of the bar, but we'll actually do it on that one in the next installment. So, but you can see how thin these signs are, and they are fantastic for putting on different buildings, whether it be scribe siding or brick or whatever. Now, if you remember, I bought in the tool clinic, I suggested these rubber brushes. And these things are fantastic for doing this. If you touch it with your finger, what happens, the glue will kind of come through that tissue and stick onto your finger. And then basically the sign rolls up around your finger. If you do not have a rubber brush, use a bag, just a regular sandwich bag, put your hand into it and use the plastic to rub initially the sign onto the building. Now, I have this other rubber brush that has a very sharp edge, and I start at the top. You have to make sure you start at the top, and it's got to be freshly put on, because you will actually push the some of the sign into that groove on clapboard or scribe siding. And the same thing with the brick. You've got that indentation. So you're actually pushing that little bit of tissue into that indentation. So it will start to shorten. And if you let it dry too much and you start doing this, it'll just rip. Now, that's an effect that you can use as well. You can make it an older sign that's started to decay, and, you know, the weathering has started to really take a toll on the side of the building, and the paint is coming off. So you can fool with that effect as well. Now, if you don't have a sharp rubber brush like this, the back of an X-Acto knife will also work, but you'll watch, because you tend to cut the sign more than you do push it into the grooves. Okay, so again, same thing for the metal signs. Now, I just put this on the back of our brick building. We're going to apply some white glue and properly position it on the building and let it dry. And you can again see how it sort of stands off, because the bond paper is so much thicker. So again, don't use your bare finger to press any sign into the glue, because it'll stick. Simple fix for this, as I mentioned, is a sandwich. That should be bag, not bar. And just push that gently into the building, and it shouldn't stick to the plastic. So the doors, we have 2 doors to paint in our little kit. So I went with the camouflage green by Krylon, and the reason I chose this is because the signs for the bar have a green in them. So I was kind of staying with the flavor of the kit and going with a green trim idea. Now, you can make them any color you want. You can also, if you primed them with a gray paint, you could just dry brush them with the green ceramic coat or whatever paint you're using, and that will work fine too. I just chose the spray paint because I had it and it was easy. Okay, so hopefully by Wednesday I should have some new printer ink, and we'll do a little review of the actual brick install of the signs, and we'll look at installing the roof, the doors. Don't install the doors yet, and add some extra details to finish off our structure by next week. So I hope you've learned something tonight, and we'll go from there. But maybe later on I'll review my sign clinic, and we can do something a little later on just strictly signs. Peace.
Thanks so much, Clark. Very well done. And I look forward to your sign thing. Let me know when it's finished.
All right. Am I drinking on the job? No, but I should be.
Anybody have any questions for Clark? Well, I guess that you've answered all their questions for this evening. So thank you so much.
Who knew?
Clark, have you tried decal paper?
I have. I find the decal paper to be a little thicker, much actually thicker compared to the tissue. And I like the tissue look. They just blend in so well. And you don't have to, how can I say it? You don't have to slide them off anything and put them on. But boy, I really like this tissue method, and I can really get faded signs with them.
Anybody else?
Yes. Do you have trouble? I'm sorry. I guess I'm there.
You're on.
Do you have any trouble with the tissue jamming in the printer?
Not on my printer, no. And I've never had a problem. As long as you tape it down, I have a sample right here. You tape it down right to the bond.
Okay.
And
Tape
I've
it
never
all the way around.
Sorry?
Tape it all the way around.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I do. And then you really don't have any problem. And you can go on all kinds of vintage sign sites and just copy them. Now, some have a watermark on them to protect their property, which I don't blame them. But a lot of don't, and you can just and you can size them because they're JPEGs, so you can size them to O scale or Z or whatever you want. So that's really easy to do, and you can make now if you're good with computer and draw or some of the other computer programs where you can actually draw something yourself, then you can make your own signs and do all kinds of things. So
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Well, Clark, thanks so much again. Really do appreciate it. Look forward to your final one next Wednesday.
Me too.
All right. So
Thanks, guys.
Let's now turn to Dave Severdale for a great discussion of his scenery techniques. Dave?
All right, now I'll do the share screen and okay, here we go. All right. Come on. There we go. Okay, this is the scenic elements that I present. And today it's basic ground cover. Time to go play in the dirt. Nothing represents scale dirt better than real dirt. I have a habit of going and collecting 5-gallon buckets full of dirt and sifting it through these screens that I found at a strange little store we have that imports all kinds of Chinese knockoffs. And when I bought them about 7-10 years ago, they were about $7 a piece. I was over at the store here about 2 weeks ago, and they still have them. Now they're $12.50 each. And I found them on Amazon for, a little bit more, average of $20 to $25 a piece now. And as you saw on the slide before, I have a smaller set. And these are those here, and they fit coffee can just perfectly. I only have 3 of them. I have the 10th of an inch, 30th of an inch, and 50th of an inch. But what it results in, I did this for a little demonstration that I'm doing for today. Take and stack them up, the bigger screen to the middle screen to the fine screen, and just start shoveling in the dirt. Then I move it all around so it sifts through. Here I've got it full, and I've got, oh, is it before it's shook? Here it's after it's shook, and here's the top one. And that's a 1/10 of an inch or bigger. The next one on the left here is a 1/30 of an inch or bigger. So that's about, I think it was 32 thousandths. And in the screen of the 1/50th, that's everything that's about 20 thousandths. And then in the actual coffee can itself, the stuff that's less than 20 thousandths, and it's basically a powder, which is great because that's what I use to blend everything with. So if you've never done any scenery at all, the best thing to do is to grab a piece of styrofoam and just make a little test diorama. First thing I did was paint it brown. I couldn't find my latex paint, and this is a water-based paint. Before I got a chance to put any dirt on it, it dried on me. Here I tried, but the stuff didn't stick too well, so I scraped that off. Went ahead and painted just regular white glue over the top. And I went ahead and put on the 3 different sizes that I was using. And so you got kind of like small rocks, another consistency that's sand, and then I use the powder, just kind of blend everything together. Then on the right, I wet it down with wet water. The best thing to do for this is to find a fine mist sprayer, because if you hit it with a regular sprayer, even with wet water, you'll get big drops coming out and it'll puddle up on you. So a fine mist sprayer is what helps in this regard right here. Anyway, here is 3 different samples of soil I got. The left one is more of a clay that came from a friend's house up in the hills. The middle one is there's a small town, Newcastle, heading up towards Auburn off of Highway 80 and the Transcontinental Railroad. And right along the side of one road, a nice little hillside, I dug up a couple of 5-gallon buckets full of dirt, sifted it down. I've got rock on the lower left, pebbles that are about 1/4 inch on the right. Upper left is the 1/30th of an inch, more sand-like, and then on the upper right is the powder. Then over on the right, the one that's labeled Bucks Lake, I was needing some dirt for basically the Feather River Canyon, which is one of the scenes on my big module. And I helped a friend go take his trailer out of Bucks Lake, and we happened to be driving up the road. The ravine at Bucks Lake goes up about 20 miles south of Feather River Canyon, so the dirt is very comparable. So I grabbed a 5-gallon bucket from there. The bad part is I forgot to write down the mileage or the mile marker it's at, so I don't know exactly where to get this duplicated. But with a 5-gallon bucket, I have enough for quite a while. And here's the 3 different colors side by side. The left is the Bucks Lake granite. The middle is the Newcastle, this kind of dirt color, and the right is the clay type. The guy has clay on his land, so it's very reddish. Here I did this actually today. Got another piece of just regular bead foam, put on the white glue and sprinkled on the 1/30th, both in the Newcastle and the Bucks Lake. The center one, I took the powder from the Newcastle and filled in. And the one on the right, I filled in with the Bucks Lake. The powder helps blend everything in. still haven't wetted these down so they can be finally glued, but other than that, that's it for today.
Okay, thank you so very much. I enjoyed that so much. Anybody have any questions for Dave?
How did you, what mountain range or whatever did you design the rocks behind you?
That's the Colorado area. That's a scene similar to the Durango and Silverton, although Durango and Silverton doesn't have a tunnel. So that's a Colorado scene, and I use the Newcastle dirt for that because it does have more of a, not reddish, but more of an iron type content to it.
So is there a technique that you use to carve out the rocks before you color?
That is Bragdon Molds,
Oh,
and it's using his resin system. That's a module, so hydrocal or any type of plaster is going to make it way too heavy. So I've learned to use his resin system, and they come out just gorgeous.
okay.
And those are airbrushed.
Oh, okay.
I'll be following up with that here in about a month or so when I get into rock molds.
I'll be looking for that because I've got like about a 10 or 12 foot tunnel that I would like to lift out the center of it, but I would like it also to blend in on each end of it if possible.
The way to do that is you overlay it. And are you going to use hydrocal or what do you use for the rock?
Well, right now I've got it made out of 2-inch styrofoam, but I haven't put the top on yet.
The Bragdon system's a little expensive, but the stuff there's no weight to it. How long is that section you're trying to lift off?
It'll be about 8 to 10 feet.
Well, with the styrofoam and Bragdon's resin, it might weigh 3 pounds,
Oh, okay.
where you'll just run more than 3 pounds on the first 1 foot square of plaster.
That's true.
Where
Right
do you
now,
live?
I live in Ohio.
Okay.
A friend of mine, he showed me this stuff. It's called brown goop. You mix some sort of a plaster cloth mix, but it's not the plaster cloth. Plaster clay, I think it is.
Okay.
And vermiculite, paint, glue, and mix that all together, and it goes on pretty nice. I've done the one gorge I've got. If we have time, I might try to show that, or maybe next time. But I did that same thing, and we carved into the styrofoam and used some of that. Turned out pretty nice, but this tunnel has kind of got me wondering how I'm going to do that with that big of a section.
Have you looked to see if you can put that stuff into a mold?
I have not yet, but I might try that.
Okay, when you mix that up, is it real sticky?
Depends. If you can mix it a little drier, or you can mix it a little wetter. If it's too dry, you just add a little bit of water. But it molds pretty nice, I think, as far as laying it on the layout.
Okay, if it's mixed with water, I would take a rubber mold and I would spray it with wet water. Not much, just mist over it.
Right.
That'll also help that stuff go down into the nooks and crannies of the mold.
Okay.
And as long as it's not sticky, or the stuff I have is a resin and it's real sticky, but after about 30 minutes, it kind of glosses over and it no longer sticks.
Okay.
So as long as it is able to harden up and no longer stick, then you can get the mold off without a problem. And depending how strong it is as to whether it'll end up breaking in some of the crevices of the mold or it will stick. But I would try to find a reasonable size mold, maybe 1 foot square with a lot of, rough rock work to it,
Okay,
and try it.
all right,
Yeah. Always try stuff. Don't ever be afraid to try, because
yeah,
you might discover a new way.
that's true. Thank you.
Hey, any other questions?
Dave, I've got one for you. You mentioned you had a learning period on using the rosin. Is
Yes.
is it difficult to use? What are there tricks to doing it? What did you learn that you could pass on?
Okay. Couple things I learned about it. Although it's real sticky to start with, it takes a little while, probably 30 minutes or so. Well, the way he does his, it's 2 parts. It's a casting resin, and you mix it, it hardens up. Then he puts a 2-part expanding foam on the back. And what I learned to do is, of course, I have a plastic sheet on the table when I do this. I make sure I got a tail of the plastic sheet, and I just take the plastic sheet, fold it up on top of the mold, and then put a little bit of weight on it to keep that expanding foam from expanding too far. In about 25 to 30 minutes, that plastic sheet will come off. I test it every once in a while, and if the expanding foam starts coming with it, I stop. But then in about a 30-minute period, that sheet will come right off. At that time, I take everything out of the mold. Then I got about 30 minutes where it's pliable and I can form it. Then when it gets hard, there's still ways to manipulate it after that. But I'd say it took me a couple weeks to really get the hang of it. Not something that, it's not like plaster where you put it in there and whether you take and put the mold up on there and then 30 minutes later pry it off, or what the other guys are doing right now, they're putting the plaster in it and leaving it.
Mm-hmm.
Because the bigger molds that we have, trying to put it up and put it on the side of a mountain, you lose half of the mold.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they're just different ways of doing it. And I've learned how to do it with that resin. Doesn't really stink. And I found that Tap Plastics has the same kind of resin, has more odor to it, but works the same way. So I love it. It's just wonderful.
Got it.
And it holds the detail perfectly.
Have you tried putting any coloring in the resin?
You can. I don't. What I found, well, that's going to be something else I'll come up on, because I color it differently than what Bragdon does. He uses basic washes. He takes the resin, coats it with white gesso, and then uses a very dark gray tempera, puts it on dry, takes a wet sponge and wipes it off. And what happens is a lot of that stuff gets wet and runs into cracks. So all you have all the cracks identified, almost like using, alcohol and black ink. Then he starts with washes of the different colors, raw sienna, some yellow ochre, and some of the other colors, some of the burnt umbers, depending whether he wants it light or dark. But I found some acrylic inks that I can spray with a airbrush. And I found out how to do it. And Mine are much faster. You can see what I've done right there with those inks. There's a couple different colors. I don't know if they really jump out. There's a little more reddish to the right as compared to straight back, which is just a little more tan. And then I can go through with the, the heavier, acrylics and dry brush and hit the tops for highlights, or I can put in rust streaks. So there's quite a few techniques I can do with the regular acrylic paints rather than doing the washes that he does.
Well, Dave, thanks so very much. Learned a lot tonight. I really do appreciate it. Look forward to your next one.
Now we got more to come.
Fantastic. Thank you. Next, I'd like you to meet our featured modeler, Kevin Hunter of Barrett Hill Trains. I heard about him because we had some people on the show that kept raving about his product, his touch throttle. So I called him up and I said, not toggle. So I called him up and I said, Kevin, these people say this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. How about coming on and talking about it a little bit and sharing what you got with us? And he agreed. And I thank you, Kevin, so much for being here this evening. And I will turn it over to you, sir.
All righty. Hi. Hello. Yeah, the touch toggle. I have been building model railroads and thinking about building model railroads like so many folks for most of my life. And I was always interested in the animation and the control aspects of the hobby. And as it turned out, many of my businesses in my life, I've done human interfaces. So for me, the interesting part of a control panel is the guy that's doing it, and and the ergonomics, how it works. It's not terribly complicated for most model railroads. I was working on a fellow's train layout a couple hours away from my home, and I was installing a control panel that I'd built to replace the original one that was in the layout. And it was quite small, and he doubled the number of tracks in it. So I was doing kind of microsurgery soldering to get it all in. And I was putting the last screw in around midnight. And he leaned in and said, now, when you're done with that, I want to talk about adding a track right here. And so I bit my lip really hard. And I said, we'll talk about that in the morning. And I had a 2-hour drive in the dark on the way home. And about halfway through, I'd completely designed the touch toggle. And I spent the rest of the drive trying to figure out what I'd done wrong, and I couldn't think of anything. So anyway, it took a long time to develop how these worked, and the technology finally caught up. But this is a touch toggle. This is our most popular unit, which is it's 3/4 of an inch square, about the same size as a keyboard key. And when you touch it, it changes color, and it can be used to operate anything that you have that's a 2-state control, so on off or left right or whatever. And so it just it responds to the touch like that. It actually has a very slight delay, a fraction of a second, to keep you from tripping every toggle in a control panel. So that's why it didn't respond there. But anyway, so this is our standard unit. We have one that has 2 lights, and they change position. So if you have these two on on showing 2 tracks, the main line and then divergent line, you can easily see which track is active. I'll get to that in just a moment, how these are used. And then here's one we have, and it's 2 green lights. So it's position only. And these are interesting to people mostly that have over a couple dozen controls in one small panel. The red light stops meaning anything if you've got a big yard or something. So it just becomes confusing. You can't tell what a main line is. So these are just a third option. And the first two, the red greens, are the most popular, but you know, that's what we make in production. We also have, this is, if you have a, you can see it actually turns off when I put my finger over it, but most people don't even see that. This is like a doorbell. So this is only on when your finger is there, and then it goes off again. These are popular for triggering sounds and for running animations. It's great to give kids something to do on the layout. They can touch the yellow buttons and make things go. These are all powered. Let me pull up a thing here. This is just one of our small control bases. The lettering's backwards. Can you see this? Anyway, it's backwards for me, but that's because of the way the Zoom works. But
Yeah,
anyway,
it's perfectly fine for us.
okay, good. You can see these are just plugged in. So each toggle comes with a foot of wire, and you know, and we have extensions, so you can go 60 feet or something. It's pretty trivial to go a distance. Normally, this would be right behind the panel, and I've got one of these pulled off, but the terminals can be removed, and they have. Let me see if I can do it. They have little screw terminals in there, if you can see the screws, and the wires just go in these little holes. So you strip the wire and push them in and tighten up the screw. You can, in this case, if this was in an awkward place or up under the layout, you could wire this and then just push it on and turn it around so that it's right. And, you know, it just pushes on the pins on the board like so. Anyway, just, you know, I built these the way I would want controls to be, so they're easy to mount. They've got the holes through for number 6 screws to mount them. The controls go in the bottom. The outputs are across the top. Every one of our bases is set up like this. You notice there are not even any numbers across because it's too obvious. And I don't care if you count left to right, right to left, or don't count at all. The way these get used, and I think, well, Jim suggested I show you some video just to show the kind of modeling I've done, just to kind of introduce myself as a modeler. I have for years run, I'm up near Baltimore, and so I had modular ON30 layout that I carried around. It had a total of 40 parts, 40 modules basically, and it never got all set up. It got close to all set up at one point or another, but all the parts are interchangeable. That was recently retired, both because the shows are gone and because after being set up over 100 times, things fell apart and just didn't work very well anymore. But somebody had seen some of my work, and I was asked to do a museum job. Let me see. I need to find what I was doing. I'm going to set this up and then show. I want to show a couple of things. One is just a 3-minute thing about the modeling. And
Hey,
other,
Kevin, when you were getting ready to share the video, making sure that the checkbox on the bottom is set for optimizing video.
Actually, if I can make a comment, we actually did a bunch of testing, and there are 2 boxes at the bottom. One says turn on the sound. You absolutely want to check that one. The optimized video really makes the video better if you have low bandwidth. If you've got a high bandwidth connection, don't check that. It'll actually be better video quality.
Okay. And I'm trying to find these things you're talking about. Is this part of share screen, or?
So
Yeah,
click on
when you
share
hit share
screen.
screen.
Oh, okay.
At the very bottom, click on share sound, on sound.
Okay.
And then share the upper left screen, which is your desktop. You want to share the upper left screen. It'll say screen 1, which will be your desktop. That way it makes the control easy.
Okay, well, you can talk me through this as I do it. I'm going to share screen and I'm going to, let's see. Oh, okay, share sound and share. and-
Upper left, which would be your main screen.
Right, it's just asking me to allow this to happen.
Ah.
And so,
Yeah, you'll get there.
well, and it's showing it, but not letting me click it. Isn't that fun?
Are you on a Mac?
I am indeed.
So on the Mac, you have to go into security settings
Yep.
and allow Zoom to share your screen contents. It's a security setting that you have to go change.
Okay, and that's kind of where I was. I just lost track of where I was. Sorry to hold people up.
No, it's the good news. You know, Apple protects your privacy. They make
Right.
sure you know what you're doing before you share your personal info. It's actually a good thing.
Yeah. And oh, it's locked. Silly me. Give us your password before we allow you to do this.
Don't say it out loud.
Oh, okay. I'm going to have to go away apparently for a moment and then it'll reopen. I'll reopen it right away. So speak amongst yourselves. I'll be right back.
Hey, Jim, if I can just take a moment while we're doing this, I'm going to throw a link in the chat. The Pacific Coast region of the NMRA is actually doing 2 weeks from today a one-day convention. What we're actually trying to do is work with the team doing that to actually use a lot of the tools we're going to use for the NMRA convention in July. It's the one in 2 weeks. The PCR convention is free. It's one day. Some pretty interesting clinics on logging. There's also a really interesting clinic. There's a guy who decided he's modeling the Yosemite Valley, and he decided that because all the photographs he had were black and white, there was no way to actually be realistic about modeling a railroad in color if all you have is black and white pictures. So he's actually built his whole railroad in black and white, and it's actually pretty interesting to see. I've actually seen it in person. So I'll put the link in there if you guys, if you're interested in looking at something to do on the 24th on Saturday. It'll start at about, I think, 8:30 California time, which is 11:30 East Coast time. But it's a great, it's kind of a cool opportunity to kind of see what we're trying to do to have a more convention feeling virtual event versus a Zoom meeting.
I will add one thing about it. When I registered, there's one question that they ask you at registration that you've got to answer, that some of us, like me, have no idea what the number is. And that's, what is your NMRA number? So if you don't know what your number is, if you can get the number before you go to the site, it'll save you a lot of time.
Well, I'm back. Hello. Let's see if we can do this. Okay. So first, I'm going to show just a little clip. This is a model that I built for a museum. The museum is in Eaglesmere, Pennsylvania. They had a 3-foot narrow gauge that ran up the mountain to the town, which is 1,000 feet above the valley floor. And it ran from the main line up. It used climax locomotives to go about 6 miles, and it took an hour to get there. So it was a nice casual run. But it was a great little railroad. Well, I mean, it averaged like a 6% grade. I mean, it was just a crazy steep thing. And so it was quite fun to build a model, and I had to find a lot of the information about it. It took 4 years to build, and this video was taken before the 4th year. So there are a few areas here that ended up being very nice cliff faces and things that aren't quite done. But much of the model was complete. I think at the time this was taken, there already were over 1,000 trees on the model. So it's 90 feet long and has one button to control it. And you push the button and 8 minutes later, the train rolls to a stop. And then you get to push the button again. But anyway, this is from their local TV station. And okay, now I get to go through all the share screen stuff. Okay, and I'm gonna, oh, okay. So, well, I'll just share the desktop and then I will, oop, come here, you. The second video will be about the touch toggles directly. So let me do that. And now, can you hear?
You haven't hit play yet.
You can, oh, okay.
Yes, we hear it.
Okay.
I've always thought if you want to really know about a place, you stop and pick up a town newspaper. Or, as we did in Eaglesmere, you go to its past to find out about the present. The Eaglesmere Museum can tell you as many stories as you have time for. One of my favorites is about an old railroad that you can see here in a very nice model.
This is a replica of the train that used to run between Sonestown and Eaglesmere from 1892 to 1929.
The original was a narrow gauge line built during what's called the resort period. In the very late 1800s, Sonestown became the starting point for the Eaglesmere Railroad. Hotel owners, you see, were anxious to create a flow of summer tourists. They helped to build the railroad that began operations in 1892.
Williamsport and North Branch stopped at Muncie was as far as they had built the train tracks. And so then they had to send coaches down the mountain to Muncie Valley and bring them back up that 7 or 8 miles, by horse and buggy.
It wasn't a very quick affair, the trip up the mountain. The steam locomotive was geared in a way that made it very good for climbing steep grades. That, however, made it very bad for speed. The engine never got above 10 miles an hour in the 7-mile run from Sonestown to Eaglesmere. The ride took an hour or thereabouts. You might not be able to beat it running alongside, but you could come close.
And they used very light rails, only 30 pounds per yard rail. And it made the track rather uneven. And so they had a lot of derailments also because of this.
The rails were laid through some scenic territory, and so it's doubtful any of the riders really paid attention to speed. They were, after all, on vacation, and time was immaterial. As the railroad continued to operate, other uses were found for it. The bark of the hemlocks covering the mountains when the railroad arrived was a good source of tannin used to tan leather, so that came down. Lumber did too. The Eaglesmere Railroad enjoyed success for a while, but by 1926, it had outlived its usefulness. Automobiles were more readily available, and so the 1-hour train ride became a short 10 or 15-minute jaunt up the mountain to vacation land. What's left of the railroad is the track bed open to hiking if one so chooses. Too bad it couldn't hang on over the years. I bet most everyone today would pay to spend an hour chugging up the mountain. Nothing else to do but sit back and enjoy the scenery, not a care in the world. The past would indeed be welcome in the present.
So, and all right then. Come now. Let's see.
Yeah, go back there and then there you go.
And I can just lose that. By the way, the all the discussions of graded dirt that were just brought up in the scenery clinic there, the soil up there is red shale, so it's really rusty colored, and I couldn't find anything that was even close to the right color. So I took buckets back to my driveway and took a sledgehammer to it and then graded it the same way. And so all the ballast and all the stuff is that same color. Anyway, I'm jumping in here in the middle of this this video there's a lot of talk, and if anybody wants to see the whole video, it's on my site. But I thought I'd cut it down to a few minutes. Anyway, and this looks like it's muted.
This particular panel we're working on is going to power 8 turnouts. So here's the control base. On the left-hand side, you're going to see where you plug the power supply into. And on top, that's where your wire feeds that go to your switch motors. At the bottom is where the touch toggles will plug into. Now, of course, before we started, we mocked everything up to see where we wanted it. Kevin's going to go ahead and screw the control base in place. Now, for the sake of video, all those wires hanging out there look scary, but all they are is 2 wires for each switch machine. And he's going to plug those into the terminals on top. Now, batting number 25, Kevin Hunter, he swings, he takes 12 volt power supply, plugs it in. Oh, look at that, folks. The green indicator light, we have a connection. He takes the connector and plugs it in the left-hand side of the control base. And don't blink, folks, look at that. A green indication, we have power. I bet you guys didn't see that coming. Here's where the fun begins. Kevin's going to plug the touch toggles in one by one. There's 8 of them on this panel. And if you see the color combinations, match that right on the control base. You can't get it backwards, but it doesn't matter which position they're in. Look at that. There's the green indication. He touches it. It's red. And as he touches it again, it turns green. Now, he'll do this for each one as he goes down the line. He'll test it. In the background, you can't hear it, but the switch machines are doing their job. These are called touch toggles. Nice touch. Hey, Kevin, these touch toggles, they're a nice touch. You get it? Touch? Come on, that was funny. Oh, come on. Now we're getting down to the heart of the operation here. Kevin takes a sketch pad and he starts sketching out a track diagram. We're going to see what looks best, but it takes a while. If you locked me in a room for a week, I'd go crazy because you locked me in a room for a week. But Kevin's the kind of guy, if you locked Kevin in a room for a week, he'd go crazy because he can't build something he designed in his head. This next part is what Kevin describes as the beauty of the whole thing. You can take a sketch that you made as a track diagram, and you can work it any way you want, and you can change it as many times as you want. Check this out.
So that's this one here on the map. So what we're going to do is take a piece of tape, put it underneath here, like that. I'm going to take this control, hold it right there underneath the map, squeeze the tape on.
Pretty cool stuff, huh? Kevin's going to finish up by taping all the rest of the touch toggles to the back of the paper, testing them as he goes. And I know you guys were wondering where the budget items are. There's one right there. That's a budget picture frame. You can pick those up anywhere. He's going to take that thing out of there and put it onto our map, and he's going to draw around it. Then he's going to be very, very careful not to cut the wires because you see they're still attached. He'll put it in the frame, mock it up. When it comes down to it, the only limit you have is the one you set. You can have any size or shape you want. We're going to try a mock attachment with a few screws just to hold it in place, and we're going to give it a few days to see if we like it or not, but it works. We left the hand-drawn version inside the frame for a couple days to test it out. We liked it. So with that in mind, Kevin came up with a nice, pretty version that he made with the graphics program and printed it out on his own printer. Hey, look at that. He even used the Spruce Cullen Timber logo that I created. This goes to show you how a combination of commercially available products and budget items can be used together to create something really special for your layout. I really like the touch toggles, don't you? Hey, they're a nice touch. Get it? Touch. I want to thank Kevin Hunter for coming out to my shop and helping me create something that will greatly enhance operations on the layout as well as look great. This is Joey Ricard with TracksideScenery.com. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
All righty there. Let's see. How do I get out of
There should be a red thing on the top that says
Stop
stop
share.
share. There you
There
go.
go. Go away. And you go away. Yeah. Oh, there we go.
There we are.
Hey, Kevin, it's Clark Cooning. How are you?
Hi.
You need a new front guy. Oh my God. Hey,
What's the matter with Joey Ricard?
well, his humor is worse than mine.
Hey, you didn't
But you
forget.
sound the same.
Yeah, but we sound the same. Yeah. I mentioned to the guys several times here, and so is some other of the members that are on about your product, and it's just fantastic. I put in the chat a picture of mine that I use, just the fascia part, and
Right.
they are fantastic. And as you know, I've tried to promote your product a lot, and it's just terrific. And I hope all the other guys on here, if you really are looking for a simple way to control turnouts, it's the way to go. And for those who are in Cato N scale track, he makes a special sort of, I won't say modified version, but it's a little heftier version that it will work with the Cato track in N scale, and they work flawlessly as well.
Right. Well, that's the Cato track unit, right side up. And it's a capacitive discharge unit, so it's got the big capacitor on it. The Cato just has 2 wires out. We have a very similar unit for Atlas and the twin coil units. It just has 3 wire connectors up here for that. And this is a neat unit because it's all charge managed. One of the things I always hated about capacitive discharge units is they usually had a light that you had to wait for until it was ready to go. So what I did was, this has a little microcontroller in it that if you push 2 buttons at once, it'll fire one and recharge and then fire the next one. And it'll do that all the way down the line. So like for the Cato machines, every single machine gets a full charge to operate. It's one, I couldn't go over 4 wide because it might cause a problem if you had to wait for a bunch of machines to go. But anyway, this is, part of my philosophy is just, the machine should serve you. You shouldn't have to wait for the machine. Anyway, one of the features, since I've got this up, is this is a pair of pins here on this side, and there's a socket on the opposite end. So you can take 2 or 3 of these and just plug them into each other and share power. You only need 1 power supply to supply a number of these across. So you saw this little guy is connected for tortoise machines, and it has 2 outputs. I'm going to have to put this all together and so everybody can see, but if I'm going to plug in this is the wires to a tortoise machine. And so, and if I touch, I get the right toggle. So when I touch this toggle, you can hear the machine run. And this is also interesting. We have a little adapter. I keep coming up with new stuff to add to the system. So this has a little electrical adapter here, which is a signal driver. And here you have, and my finger's on it, so it's changing wildly, but there you have a signal. The signal indicates the position of the well, and obviously pulling wires apart or shorting things, but the signal will indicate the position of the tortoise directly. And so it just allows you to just wire things together and make that work. For the snap-based systems, we also have a little unit like that. And it goes between, I'm not going to bother with all of this, but this little guy plugs in where the toggle plugs in, and the toggle would plug into that. And then you have wires here that the signals, your little 3 wires out of a dwarf signal or whatever, will just wire into this connector. And so even if you have like the Kato, the power goes away the moment you've fired it. And so this would give you a continuous indicator light where there's normally none available. And so this is a little add-in that's just a plug-in.
Where is that on your site, sir?
It's called an LED driver, and these would be under adapters.
Oh, sure. Gonna cost me money.
Well, yeah, I've had people trying to put in, Atlas snap relays, and the Atlas snap relays cost $18. So, so this little adapter, I think, costs $7. So, I try to keep it down. There's the adapters keep growing because somebody asks me another question, can you do this? Can you do that? And so we have, and you can see all these on the site under adapters. They're also linked under the front page. And I just arranged to hire somebody to help me restructure the website. It's just grown, it's worse than my hair gets when it gets long. There's a little adapter. It just plugs in. Well, it's over here. It just plugs into 2 inputs, and it controls the 3 switches in a Y. And then you have 1, 2, 3 toggles, and you touch one and it opens that route, and the other 2 toggles go red and that one goes green. So you have 3 toggles in a triangle, and it allows you to control a Y just by picking the route you want to operate on. We have the same kind of thing for a 3-way switch machine. It looks very similar because it's built on the same board, but this little guy, 3-way switches are always a pain in the neck because often the switch points will clash. If you
Kevin,
yeah?
let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Can you show me the wiring diagram for that Y?
The wiring.
I'm assuming it's part of the user note of how to wire a Y.
Sure.
But do you have that?
It's so monstrously simple that it.
No, Peace. I understand. I'm just making a suggestion. You said you were hiring a guy to do the website.
Yeah.
You need to do really good documentation like that. Those user notes, a user note on each one of those.
Oh yeah.
Is like DCC Specialties. If you look at theirs, they have these little user notes.
Yeah.
Because I'm incredibly impressed with what you're doing, but it looks like it could be really overwhelming for somebody.
It often is, and actually, the very technical stuff I really hate to put up on the website because so many people. It's easier just for me to say this is super simple, and and trust me on that because if people dig way into it, it sounds much more complex than it is. I'm not trying to say you're wrong. I'm trying to say
no. I'm just saying it sounds great, but like the Y thing, it'd be great to just have a picture that says, "Here's how you wire." It's really simple.
Well, the important thing is on the. I don't know if you've got my website up, but the website, the easiest way into the website is touchtoggle.com. There is another barretthillshop.com is the same one, but nobody spells it right. So anyway, if you go to the site, the primary thing is what does it look like on your control panel? Because that's what you're buying. And a big part of what I care about is that when you're done, you don't see any of my stuff. You see your drawing and some dots of light. And everything that I've made is behind the scenes and hidden. So, and I can't describe how simple it is to wire these things. I mean, it's 2 wires to each switch machine. And with a tortoise, it's the 2 mainline switches are just wired so they point at each other from a single output. So you only have 2 outputs. And well, anyway, I'm sorry, I'm a little flustered, but you're right. I mean, but the mechanics are less important than what you see on your screen. So actually, if you go to the site, it shows you the different map representations that you might get. And that's what you would get this based on. The other one thing to point out is that everything I sell is satisfaction guaranteed. So if you don't like it, we'll get it right. And it's very rare that I have a problem, but you know, I don't want to have any unhappy customers out there. So
how about servos?
Servos are right here. Actually, one of our very first products was a servo control base. And just one second here. Okay. Our servo control base looks like this. And it's got, it needs to have its own power supply. The servos draw an awful lot of juice. So for every 8 servos, you need a separate 1 amp power supply, which is why the power supply is actually a socket in the middle of the board like that, just so you can get everything close together. This unit has 8 toggles in, 8 servos out. The servos, for those that are not familiar, here's one. I'm sitting at my bench, at my lab bench, which is just littered with toys. Anyway, this is a servo motor, and it's was developed to steer model airplanes and model cars. And it just has a little actuator arm, a little motor. It's highly geared down. And so this base is designed to send the control signals to it. Servos need to be fed an intelligent signals to tell them where to be. So this unit, you just plug the servos in. To set it up, we have a little remote. You need one of these for your whole layout. And you plug a standard DCC wire in here to here. It's not DCC, it's just using that readily available cable. And when you plug it in, you go through a little procedure, but you push this button and one of your toggles will start to flash. And if you want to, so your own control panel tells you what you're doing. If you want to adjust that, when you hit select, and it will flash the current toggle mostly green. And then you move it with the 2 left and right buttons, you move it to where you want green to be. You hit select again and it'll start flashing mostly red, and you move it to where you want red to be. You push it again and it'll go back and forth, and you can slow it down and speed it up with the same left and right buttons. When you're done, you hit select one more time and it goes off to the next toggle. Using the black button, you just skip over any ones you don't want to do. And so you skip back to the end. They all go red just to let you know that you've reached the end. And then it lets you try everything. And so it's very fast to get into one thing you want to adjust it, get it all set up, and then step out. And it stores that information for practically forever. So you can take this when you're done, unplug it, and put it back in your toolbox. So if you had multiple servo controllers, you would just plug each one in separately to set this up. The whole thing was designed so you didn't need a computer or anything like that to do. And the idea of having the remote is that you can walk over to the servo and stare at the points, get them to just touch, you know, get them to operate just the way you want. And then, and so you would be able to set the switch while you were standing next to it. And so that's why the servo has a cable. Anyway, these were one of the first things we developed. And the joke at the time that I thought was that people told me, well, why bother making a tortoise controller? Because everybody's going to be using servos next year. And obviously I sell more tortoise controllers than servo controllers, but we have this, and we have, I don't, it's somewhere here. We have one that's 4 across for places you don't need 8. So that's our 2 servo control models.
Kevin, let me ask you a question about that. I've heard people say that they use Arduinos to control the servos. I don't need an Arduino if I'm using the product that you're showing right now. Is that right?
No, that's entirely correct. Yeah.
So with yours, I can plug in the servo. I can go with that little handheld control device that you showed, and I can in effect program the servo to do exactly what I want it to do, and then it'll do that forever after that.
Right. And it, remember,
I don't need Arduinos. I don't need to go to a computer. I don't need anything else.
There's no computers involved. And at least to date, all of our product are made so that you don't have to have computers involved. So yeah, that was very much the point. You know, when this was developed about 7 or 8 years ago, so it, you know, it was long before most people had ever heard of Arduino. And it stands alone. You don't need any of that. And there's no, you know, pushing buttons is how technical it gets. I mean, that's it. For your convenience, there's a button here on the base that says center. And if you push that button, all of the servos go to the middle. And to indicate something strange, all of the toggles light up both red and green. So it centers all the servos so that it makes them easy to mount, just the same way as the you know, centering a tortoise can make it easier to mount.
Kevin, let me ask you another question. If I have a train detection system on my layout, I can plug in your touch toggles and your other doodads, or whatever you call them, the enhancers. I can run my whole layout without touching anything. I can have the signals operate. I can have the switches operate. I can have lights come on showing me where the trains are. I can have lights come on showing me where the switch is thrown. All I need is your equipment and a detection circuit. Is that right?
Well, it's not quite right, although things change. My focus is on stuff you touch. So the answer is, if you want that whole system, there are a lot of people doing that. But I personally believe that, and I'm a geek, you know, but running trains with your computer is a really neat hobby, but it's not model railroading. It's another hobby. It's a whole set of other skills and knowledge that is different. So with that in mind, you know, my idea was to make it easy. Most of my clients have a walk around DCC throttle, but if you've ever tried to run switches with DCC, you either have to stop the train or be in severe concern of wrecking it because you know, you're off doing something else with the train throttle. I mean, you know, so it's very interrupting to do that. So most of my clients have a local control panel, and small control panels have become the norm that are right there. So you can reach over and uncouple something and so forth. And so you have this little local control panel, and then you walk over to the next one. Most people just have the standard that when you're done with a control panel, just make sure everything's green again and all your main lines are clear and so forth. And so it just makes it so much easier to run that way. Now, a lot of people do have DCC and want to run JMRI or think they want to. I'll say it's way more common for people to put in stuff so they could run stuff in the future. And they never do. But we do have, we have a little, I'll just leave it to this. It's all on our website. We have a little unit that is the same size as this, but it has little wire connectors to go to the push button inputs on DCC controllers. So if you have accessory decoders, you can wire these so that when the touch toggle is touched, it requests the DCC decoder to throw the switch, just the same as any trackside button would do. It also reads, for example, the voltage to a tortoise machine or to an LED indicator, and it sets the color of the toggle to that, to the position that's appropriate. So if the DCC throws the switch, the toggle changes color on your control panel, even though you didn't touch it.
Right.
And this is designed, it's got, for the technical folks, it's got opto isolators everywhere through it. So it's all isolated. That's the key thing, from all the voltages and all the stuff in your decoder system. So it's designed specifically that way, which is why we call it the universal translator, because it lets it push buttons. And DCC or Digitrax uses positive common, and NCE uses negative common, and so forth. Well, by using these isolators, it's just a matter of wiring it right. It works on anybody's system. Any two inputs next to each other can use any two different decoders. So on the same base. So it's very, very easy to use these things. Just to wire them up to any system that has button inputs. Obviously, it has to be able to accept the request. But the nice thing there is you can lock out your toggles if you have an open house and you don't want anybody playing with it, you know, that kind of thing. It lets the whole DCC thing, you know, be used. And without getting into it blow by blow, we have the same thing for LCC. RR Circuits does mostly the LLC modules now, and our stuff just plugs into that. I'll also mention that you brought up Arduinos. These little 3-pin connectors plug directly into an Arduino, what's called a sensor board, which is just a little adapter board that's made for it. They're made for every size of Arduino. So you can plug our touch toggles directly into an Arduino, and they work on the same 5 volts, and they give the same logic level output. And on our site, if you're into the software stuff, we have guides to help design things. If you want to override the color of the toggle because of, you know, DCC controls, stuff like that, you can easily do that in the software on the Arduino. So I'm totally good with people using their own controls, their own bases, and just using the touch toggle, you know, which is just a very stable way to have a touch input. I mean, one of the things about each touch toggle is it has a voltage control, or a voltage stabilizer inside it. There's there's not much room in there, but that way you can run these things 100 feet and they just work. It's very, very stable. So that's why it's fun to sell them, because they don't go bad. And every time you turn them on, they stabilize. They measure the environment they're in, and they do this again and again every few minutes. But they determine, so if moisture has changed things, or if the plastic has been changed, or positions have been moved around a little bit, it just adapts to that, and that's all built into the toggle. So that's what makes them so rock solid. Anyway, they're that's the main story of these things.
Hey, Kevin?
Your product could also handle uncoupling, right? The card?
Yeah. And I mentioned the yellow buttons earlier that are like a doorbell. Well, the old Katie uncouplers, it's very important that they not be able to lock because they overheat. And so those are popular with that. I didn't mention it, but one of our popular items, let me see where it is. Okay. This is a popular version of this, and this is our relay base. So this has 4, we have them with 2, but we also have them with 4 relays across, toggles in the bottom, just switched outputs at the top. These are 10 amp relays, so you can turn on the room lights, you can throw little signals, you can use these to push accessories on Lionel stuff and not worry about it. And so this will work, and of course Katie uncouplers would be something you would use this to
right.
They use a huge amount of current when they're on, so this would be appropriate for those. These can also turn tracks on and off, that kind of thing, so it'll handle any on-off function. The Rapido Trains uncoupler, which is very popular now, uses the it uses the bipolar controller that's the same as for Kato, and it uses a reversing DC pulse, and so that's what that's about. And so that's a standard stock product. Yeah, I think
Kevin, for a guy wanting to start using your product, can he just go to your website and figure out what he needs to order? Does he need to talk to somebody? How would a guy like me, who's not that sophisticated, ever get started with all this?
Well, it is explained pretty well on the website. Now, it's not enough that everybody's happy with it, so I get an awful lot of phone calls. But so if what I will recommend, though, is definitely read the website first. I get really tired when people call me up and say, "What's on your website?" It's like, that's why there's a website. And I hesitate to sell anything without the website because you like that.
You know what that reminds me of? The first time we talked, and I called up and I said, "Listen, I hear you got some kind of a product that lets me control my turn-offs." And you must have thought, who on earth is this crazy person?
Well, I get all kinds. I mean,
well, he does live in Florida. That's all you have to say.
Oh, you're a Florida man. Yeah, the first paragraph in the website says this works through glass and paper and plastic, right? It's in the second sentence, if not the first sentence. And the number of people that say, "Does this work through glass?" I'm like, what? What am I, chopped liver? I'm just.
Jim doesn't get out of the home much in Florida.
That's right.
So, well, and like I say, I do get all kinds, and some guys, some guys can't read it, or have other issues. So one of the reasons that the green has a following is because 10% of guys are slightly colorblind, right? And about 1% cannot see the difference between green and red. So, and not to be telling tales, but oh shoot, Hunter, he's doing your clinic next.
Yeah.
The hunters with the stains.
Rick Hunter.
Rick Hunter is red-green colorblind, profoundly colorblind. He can't. If you have this up, I showed him this, and I said, "See," and he said, "Did something happen?"
and don't drive with him unless Maureen's going.
Yeah, it's yeah, okay. And he's got that silly sheepish grin, It's like, yeah.
Hey, Kevin, we have a question on YouTube. Will this work with the Switchmaster machines in O scale?
Switchmasters, yes. Switchmasters have an odd external resistor that often you need to play with a little. So depending on the voltage that it's set up for, you may need to alter the resistors. But the Switchmasters do work fine with this. They would use the same as the tortoise drive machines, which are actually some of our least expensive. The direct base is what they're called. And yeah, especially in O scale, I find a lot of guys still have Switchmasters running in the background. The Switchmaster was built with about 4 different motors, if I'm not wrong. And so there is a slight difference in behavior as you go one to the next. Our direct base has a 60 milliamp output. And so if you have a very high draw version of our, let me see here. We have, okay. This is actually of interest. I do want to bring this up because a lot of people end up needing these, particularly if you have snap type, coil operated machines. I mentioned that each base will deliver a full pulse to each switch machine. So it's very common, for example, if you have two switch machines that are on a crossover with facing points, you might want to operate them together. So if you had 2 Atlas machines and you wanted them to be operated by single control, we have this little guy, which is called an input splitter, and it has 2 connections to the base, like so, and a single connection for a toggle. And so if you want to do a crossover with snap control machines, you'd wire the 2 machines to 2 outputs, and you plug in this input splitter and a single toggle, and you touch the toggle, it'll tell both of them to throw. But in practice, you would hear them go click, click, and each one would fire with a full charge. So it gives you the full dependability of the capacitive discharge unit, but you can control it with a single control. I'm trying to think how to show this. Okay, which brings me to the crossover. A lot of folks, as I said, we have single lights, which are really popular for simple layouts, and the 2 light versions, very popular for more complex layouts where it's nice to have which track is being taken as part of the indication, so that it's not just based on the color. We have this new device called a third light indicator, and here I've got a 2 light toggle, and this just slips onto it, like just slips over the 2 light toggle. See how simple? I always like to say, but yeah, it just slides on there. And so now you've got the 2 lights, and Okay, and it has a little place to plug the toggle into. Let's see. And then I plug the combined things. Let me do this. Yep. And then I plug the combined set in. Now this is called our third light indicator, and it was developed because so many people had asked me for something that would be usable for crossovers. So here you have two main lines or the crossover. And so this can indicate, and if your tracks are close together, you just turn them a little bit and they work together like that. But this gives you a 3-light indication, which is really handy when you're doing a crossover in the middle of two main lines. And if there are better pictures of this on what this looks like on the site. But this again is it's also under adapters. It's also referred to in inline and context. But I actually used to do some of the earliest websites, and I get so lost doing my own at this point. So it's really going to be good to have it cleaned up a bit. But the third light indicator, most people don't need more than 1 or 2 of these for their crossovers, but they really give you a much nicer indication when you're trying to get that. Anyway, and the fun part of this is that you can start with anything. You can start with a few toggles and a control base. All these adapters plug in. So if you don't like what you've got, or if you hear about a different feature, or if you buy a 3-way switch, or if you install a Y, all those parts just plug together. They use all the same parts. Every toggle works with every location. If somebody buys a bunch of toggles and then realize they don't want them, we'll be happy to exchange them. I didn't mention that we also have one other toggle. It fell off the plate here, but this guy is a fascia mount toggle. And so it just has a 1-inch hole that it mounts in, and it's got its own flange cover that covers a host of sins. And so, so if you have either a shelf railroad, for example, that you don't really have a place for a central control panel, or get the light out of there. But you can see it's a standard toggle, but it mounts in a 1-inch hole with a flange. And so it just makes it really easy. If you don't want to have a whole control panel, you can just have this little guy right in the side of the layout. It's slightly recessed. It's about 1/4 of an inch in, but that way, if you bump it this way, it doesn't trip. So it's really good for what I think of as a lonely crossover out someplace, or a single spur that's not really part of any switching area. The guys with shelves just love them because they can just walk along and operate the toggles wherever they are.
So Kevin, that would be great for a modular layout, except for the public. And so the challenge is now to develop the decoder ring that I can wear on my finger, and it'll only toggle if I've got the decoder ring on. So if you can develop that, I think you got a winner.
Well, yeah, and every time somebody says something smart ass, I come up with a new product. I mean,
I love the way this works. It's just the problem we have is when you put these switches on panels where the public walks by. Let me put it this way: a push button switch is an intoxicating thing to push. This is like catnip.
Phil, do you not have cattle prods?
Well, so actually,
we do it once or twice a show, and we never have a problem for the rest of the weekend.
So on the nose lathes I built, I put the toggle switch on the top in the middle of the layout. It's one of those little micro toggles, you barely see it. I have a layout I built before, and I put really nice metal push buttons on the sides that I wired to some. And I've actually been thinking about rewiring that and moving all the controls up on the layout. but leave the switches on the side. And when you push them, have a recording say, please keep your hands off the layout. And I figure if you did that, it'd be very quick. They wouldn't touch it. So, but I also thought about just wiring up with 10,000 volts and seeing what would happen when they touched them.
I love the question. And when I'm standing at a show and somebody asks me something like this, a lot of times I'll kind of go, and they'll have to pull me back to the ground, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't occur to me off the top of my head how to do that trivially.
No, I understand. By the way, I understand it's totally non-trivial. That's actually why I asked. But it's an interesting thought process.
Most of this, when you talk about what you just mentioned, right? I have a whole bunch of little widgets. Here's one. This one just got its name. I don't have a package or a label for it, right? But you'd notice they all look the same. They got a plug on one end and a toggle plug here and something going on in the middle. And these little guys have one little tiny brain in it, and I teach it to do some clever little trick, and it does that forever. It's the same, kind of little microcontroller thing. So the deal is, if we figured out how would you turn it off, right? I mean, one way to turn it off is to pull the plug out, and there's always that, right? But the point is that, we could figure out a way to disable it. And
a ring with an RFID chip in it and an RFID reader that senses proximity and says, I only activate the toggle for changing if that RFID is within 6 inches. But it's an interesting concept to say, could you make something where only somebody who had that thing could actually activate one? Otherwise, it's just an interesting thought process. I love the product.
Question I could make that. I don't know if you'd want to pay for it.
Right, paying for it's the hard part. I understand.
And then you need a disclaimer also.
You just put a key in the panel.
Yeah.
And only a person with the key can turn it on.
Right.
Yep.
Well, one of the products we make is a little widget like this. It's gray, not yellow. That's why this is yellow, so we can tell them apart. And it's a multi-input adapter. So it's one of the most popular little add-ins that we make. And it lets you plug 2 or 3 toggles in to a single input, and they all work together. So if you have them on both sides of a module, for example, you touch one and they both go red, and you touch either one and they both go green. And so it's really handy because now you can put a toggle on 2 different control panels and they work together. You don't even notice, you just get to the other control panel and it's right. It's again, and a lot of, I've been selling a lot of Y controls, the little Y controller that takes care of just making it into roots. But then everybody wants the 3-way, the multi-input adapters for the Y controls so that they can operate them from both sides of a peninsula where the Y is. And it's, well, duh, it's straightforward. And of course, with the three connectors, you could actually have 3, in a modular layout, you could have 3 control panels, each with 3 toggles controlling the Y, and you just walk up to it from any side and be able to run it. So anyway, but I'm just trying to figure out how to make that disabler work.
So an interesting thought might be to think about if you're a modular, I'm thinking about the way the modular, if you're actually using modules at a show, if you had a way on a module to push a button and enable switching on that module for a defined amount of time, like 30 seconds. So you push this button and the buttons, if you push the buttons then for the next 30 seconds, they'll change, but after 30 seconds, they lock back down. So the members would know, and you could hide that button to turn it on. So you walk up to a module, if you want to switch it, you push the enable button, you can operate it. When you walk away, it disables itself. That might be an interesting way to think about it.
Well, I'm thinking you might see a new product in a couple of months.
No, it's cool. That was the whole idea of having the conversation. I love the controls, but I love the little dimple one would be wonderful on a module. And if you put two of them on either side, it's perfect for walk around. It's the problem I've had is putting them on the fascia. The public, I've literally sat at a show, been driving a train. We have signs that say don't touch the button, and watch somebody physically. I've looked at a woman across, an older person, and watch them look at me, look at the button, look at me, reach down and push the button with my train on top of the switch. And it was like, it's like they knew they were supposed to do it. They looked at me and knew that I knew they were supposed to do it. They did it anyway, just because they can.
I had a mother and son walk up to my modules, and she said, "Can he push the button?" And I said, "Not while the train is on top of it." So he pushed the button while the train was going through. It's like, yeah, you can push the button, but not right now. Oh no, there it goes. So yeah, it's no. And so I'm thinking of this that would have two toggles and a disable line.
Yeah.
And
but I think the guys that have a time to turn it on, you're following your train around a module edge. You come up to a module, you want to run the switches, you push a button, and now you got control for they're operable for the 30 seconds you're there. When you walk away, they automatically disable. Might be a real flow because
one of the clubs at Train Fest called ModuTrack, what they do, they actually have RCA jacks in the front, a red one and a black one.
Oh.
And they have a wrist band basically. And what it has is got a little resistor in it, and all they do is plug it into the one or the other, which then keys the switches. It works great, and nobody can touch it, nobody can fool with it unless you have a wristband.
Right. No,
very simple.
You're dead to rights there. That's good. Well, anyway, I will be playing games with that. Years ago, I took on making a timer so that you could push a button and have it just time, for whatever. And so the original idea was, for example, for a KD uncoupler. So you push it and it just holds for 20 seconds and lets go. And it turned out to be the most difficult, stupid little project I ever took on. And for various reasons. Mostly I just wanted it to be really small like this. And getting the computer to work is fine. Getting the human interface to work is the hard part. There's an old electronic line, which is in many things, but if you make something truly foolproof, then the world will present a better fool. You have to really think about stuff pretty hard to figure out how many ways people can screw it up. I think.
Hey, Kevin, a quick question about the Arduino stuff.
Oh yeah.
I do programming with Arduinos and stuff, and you were saying you had to have an external board to make your switches work?
Well, there's a standard board called a sensor board, a sensor, what do they call them? Shield.
Okay.
And the sensor shield presents every single pin with a plus and ground next to it. And that's what you need. This is not an exotic board. This is something that everybody makes. And it's designed for, it works with servos, so most of the servo guys know about them. And it works with many three-wire sensors. So it's a way to plug in plus, minus, and a sense line. And
so if I've already built my Arduino and I just want to use one of your switches, I just need the +5, the ground, and then a signal line.
Yeah.
So I don't really need the other board.
No, and I've actually run them by indicating pin, what would it be, like pin 5, your ground, right?
Right.
Pull down. Pin 6, pull up.
Right.
Pin 7, pay attention.
Right. Okay.
And so then you can just plug it in those 3 pins. It works just fine.
So what's the smallest control board that you make then? A lot of my seen were 4 pins
Control board?
that you plug the sensors into.
Oh, well, we make a two output direct base. Well, the smallest one is right here. And let me disentangle it just for a moment because it's kind of under everything else. And let me power it up.
But I mean, the ones you were showing before had 8 pins, 4 pins. Like I have a switch out in the middle of nowhere that just needs 1.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
That's a tortoise, and the toggle plugs into the tortoise.
Okay.
And it operates the tortoise.
Well, I'll be using servos. I've created my own circuit and everything. I just need, I was going to use a flush mount push button, but I like your buttons a lot better.
Sure.
So
the smallest servo base we make is 4 channels.
Okay, so
that's
I can just use your button to plug into my board then, and that would be fine.
Oh yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah. The trick with the servos for us is that you can't run them. If you run a servo to the end of its throw and it's only able to go part way, it'll sit there and get very hot. It'll quit.
Right.
So you have to run it until it's closed and stop.
Right.
And so from our point of view, all the servo stuff had to be carefully settable, and that was not difficult, but you couldn't just let it run, full throw.
Understandable.
And so it became. We have a fairly intelligent chip in there, so it was, I could make a 2-channel and it would cost the same as a 4-channel. That's the short answer.
Yeah. Okay.
And
but I like the idea that I can use your buttons with my circuits, so I may be looking to pick up a few of those.
Well, are you using DCC or just the servo driver?
I have my own little board, and I just need a button to trip the servo.
So if you're just using a manual button, it's literally you plug it in, and hot and green is high and red is low, and that's
great.
So they're just absolutely simple for direct control.
Good, thank you.
Sure. And then for the tortoise crowd, I'll point out we do have this. So anyway, so this was mostly for modular use, and that we developed this. And one of the cool things is this one takes a single toggle, but we make the same unit for a few bucks more with a second toggle plug. So you can, for a module, you put this in the middle of the module and you just run a toggle off to either side. So now it doesn't have the disable function that I'm about to create someplace else, but anyway, I should ask regarding the disable function, would this be primarily of interest only on one side of the module, or would you need to control which side, or all sides, or?
I would think both sides, because it shows you get both sides.
Okay.
Depending on how you
we
set
run
them
our
up.
modules on both sides, and
yeah, so it's free mode style or something like that. Yeah.
I mean, having it so that you had 2 buttons, one for either side, and you could half it would be a level of sophistication that'd be really cool, but probably not absolutely necessary.
Oh no, I think it would just shut down all control
on both sides. Yeah, you just kind of turn.
Master was.
And I think you can. I think everybody can figure out module by module that it's something that happens on a module.
Right. And so no, that would be pretty straightforward to build. So damn it, I'll probably build it. There are things, some of these things make me sit up bolt upright in the middle of the night. I go, oh shoot, that's how you do that, and then I have to go write it down.
Well, Kevin, my last question was going to be, what are you going to do next? but I don't even want to ask that because I'm scared that we'd be here for another 2 hours.
No,
So
I will.
You probably have more ideas than anybody's ever thought about having.
I have as many products sitting on a shelf unfinished as I have products.
That's what I figured.
Some of the products, and I have, for example, one project that I think is coming to a close. I've worked on for 3 years, and I've had 4 different prototype boards made to try and get it to work. And it turned more and more complex until I finally said, I need just an easier way to do this. And so I did. And yeah, I have to be very careful not to talk much about stuff that isn't out yet, because like, if, for example, I mentioned the timer. I told people a timer was coming and then it couldn't happen. It just couldn't happen for a long period of time. And people got so upset with me. And it's like, I shouldn't have told you anything. And so, but I'm working on projects that include DCC. I mean, a more advanced version of DCC, a non-DCC controlled network, and a root controller, which people have been after for years. And
what's a root controller?
It's where you say, I want this track and all of the switches to get to that track line up.
Oh, okay.
And the thing is that the old diode matrix that was a root control thing, if you've ever.
Yeah.
And the problem was that if you ever try to indicate that, it would be crazy difficult to have an indication other than just looking to see what somebody pushed last. Well, yeah. I've not only developed a good way to indicate that, I've developed a much better way to indicate that. And so the root control can be used for totally isolated routes, like this yard over here and that one over there. It can also be used for interconnected routes. So you can ask for a route that doesn't interfere with another route and they both show green, that kind of thing. It's I never want to do anything that couldn't be improved on. So that's why I fussed with them so long. But
Kevin, it sounds to me like what you're doing and the direction that you're going, the products you have are absolutely critical for the success of the NMRA's LCC program. Am I right, or am I missing something here?
I will not say anything bad about LCC, and what particularly Dick Bronson, who has just gone head and shoulders into this, have done to make LCC work, is really impressive. I keep arguing with him personally. We've never had a phone call that didn't last an hour. If you know Dick, that's not hard, but I keep telling him that I want him to sell stuff cheaper. He wants to hold the price up so that other people get into the business. I'm like, that is not going to work. You need more to sell more products so that you have more people using it.
Yeah.
But it is. This is me, and this is a constant conflict between me and people who are more engineering oriented. I said, this is what my control is about. Everything else is glamour. It's add-ons. It's stuff to make this work better, right? But for me, it's about the human interface and how easy is it, and how easy is it to set up, and do you need a computer degree to get to it? And so I have no interest in JMRI other than supporting it, right? I do want to support it. In fact, I've been losing sleep over how to get information back to the JMRI computer, because it's really an essential part of all this play, and it's beyond this discussion by a good bit, but my thought is that JMRI is too complicated. My thought is that LCC is not the easiest way to do it. And I have a different goal in mind than the LCC approach. And I was prepared to make LCC equipment, and it just got more and more complex. So, and I'm not gonna, I'll just say that I've been working on possible variations and ultimately they link into LCC. Again, I don't want to do anything alone. So I want to be able to integrate everything. And I've talked to Jim Scorsese up at NCE about this. I've talked to Dick Bronson about this. It's like, my idea is that everything works with everything. And somebody's going to have to build a bridge, between this network and that network, or LCC and DCC and the next thing. And those are happening, but the implementation has become very difficult. And so, and I don't know if any of my projects will work out, but I see something that is just much easier to assemble. I see networks that set themselves up, that you don't have to, again, my stuff doesn't have numbers on it. So I will say, let me see, grab a board someplace. I cleaned up, so I don't have any stuff here, but this is, no, all right. In the middle of some of my boards, in the middle of many of my boards, is an unoccupied spot that is already engineered. It's already got leads to it, but it doesn't have anything there. And that's for an expansion that I've been planning on. And maybe it'll happen, but it's now built into most of my stuff. So if I can figure out the way to make it happen, it'll be nice. It'll be very nice. So that, now I've said too much, but
No, I appreciate your frankness. I really do. I've had a couple of people on the show talking about computerization of their model railroads. I keep hearing bits and pieces from different people. I am totally confused in my own mind about LCC. Arduino, I know the word. Now hearing you talk about what that little device you have will do, I think I understand what Arduinos really are right now. I have never understood them before tonight. So I admire what you're doing so much, Kevin. You're bringing sanity to an area of the hobby that I have just been so frustrated trying to break into. Yeah. So thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you so much for all your help.
Yeah, I hope most people got their questions answered, and anybody that knows me knows I could probably do this for another 2 hours. So it's a good thing to stop.
Well, that's what I was thinking, and I'd love to have you back if you'd like to come back. Once you have developed a little bit more about what you would like to do next, or some of the other items that we've talked about tonight, if you develop them, I wish you'd come back and tell us all about it.
Oh, sure. And there are a couple of things that have kind of jumped up out of the woodwork, and so they'll probably happen first. I do so many of these things that literally the other night I woke up and realized that one project could knit into another and solve all the problems, and that led me just in a totally third direction, just totally off. But I think it's going to be a really neat product, and it's going to be one I can do in under, certainly in under 6 months. And so that'll change the attitude towards a lot of the stuff I do. So, whoopee.
That's great. I look forward to hearing about it and have you back.
Yeah. Well,
Hey,
thanks.
Kevin, just one question. Have you talked to a company called CTI? They're I think they're also in Maryland somewhere, and they build kind of a wholly different centralized control system. Might be
Oh,
interesting to talk to them. I've heard good things about them from a couple of people.
is this Michael?
And that's all you have. All I know. So
Oh, okay.
somebody else may know more, but basically, a couple of people have that I kind of respect have told me it's just a lot easier to use than the JRMI
Yeah.
CTC controls, and it's a kind of a much more logical electronics package than either the Chubb stuff or like the Arduino stuff.
Yeah,
So
I know the guy who did that. He actually, we talked about him working on the touch toggles early on, and his name just popped out of my head. But his approach involves, I'll just say, a lot of wires, like just a lot of wires, and he's got a very advanced, very complex signaling system capability that is really cool. And he's using backplane computer technology from early PCs, and just huge boards that do really neat things with a lot of wires. And so,
that's actually a very interesting debate that we need to have in the industry about centralized versus distributed intelligence systems.
Mhm.
So we're doing a fairly large O-scale layout and putting in a signaling system and control, and it will be centralized in about 3, maybe 4 locations on a 120 by 40-foot layout. And every wire under the layout will be a point-to-point Cat5. So if there's a signal, for example, if there's a signal with 2 signal heads, searchlight signal, you have 8 wires to support that. Because it turns out we have to have converters. We have to have 12 volts. You have 12 volts in ground and 3, basically short lines back into the control system. That's a Cat5. So you just run a single Cat5 out there. And what you're running is this stuff you buy in spools of 1,000 feet for practically nothing, because it's slow speed wiring now. It doesn't do the 100 megabits they want in the offices. And so it turns out it's really easy to centralize everything. And I really think there's an interesting question about where you have these distributed buses and everything's an intelligent node. And you not only have to worry about all your stuff of wiring and what you've done, but you also have to worry about how well the bus works and when things don't get synchronized. So it's a really interesting debate about whether buying a lot of low voltage wire and running it as Cat5. So here's the interesting thing: to put a switch, to put a signal in, we're going to have a board that has a RJ45 connector on one side, because we're using custom signals, has 2 RJ14, which are the little 6-pin connectors.
Right.
And the signals have 2 connectors. You plug them in, you plug the RJ45 in, you stick it up on the layout with some Velcro, and you're done with your wiring under the layout.
Yep.
You can literally put a signal in about 30 seconds.
The one of the projects has to do with signals. One of my projects
has
to do with signals. Several years ago, a manufacturer who produced signal systems in the late 70s gave me all of his information and all of the rights to reproduce his program, his setup, which it turned out was a really good educational lesson, but not what I wanted to do. But it has led me through a couple of iterations, and my current concept is to have an RJ14 wire, a DCC control wire, six wire, running from each signal to head to each next signal head pair, and it's got serial communication in it, so you can send a whole lot of packet information. And then it direct drives all the signals. And I've considered wiring it with terminals so that you can stuff the little wires in and tighten them down. Wiring to a RJ45 jack, which is what you're talking about, the Ethernet RJ45 connector is a good, clever idea. I'd love to see. Is this for a club that you're working?
Yeah, we're doing it for a club. We're going to put some clinics there, but just to give you guys an idea of how easy this is, You can buy a 48 port, 48 Cat 5 RJ45 connectors in a panel that's about this wide. It's designed to go in a rack for wiring. And on the back side, it's got punch downs. And so, you know, that signal runs back, plugs in there, and then you just punch that down to a connector into whatever board you want. And it turns out by centralizing stuff, you really simplify all the maintenance and support and the installation.
Yeah. I disagree. Too many wires. And that's the only.
But you never see a wire. No, I'm serious.
I understand. I understand.
You never see a wire. All you see are plugs. They're just plugs.
But you pay for the hardware one way and the other. And so I would opt for a distributed system. But that's because of all this other research I've been doing. Right. So
no, I understand. This is why, by the way, this is why I think it's a really interesting debate. Because by the way, I could argue either side. It's a really interesting debate about whether the complexity of distribution versus centralization with wiring is the right answer, and you know, for different folks. So
well, I'm really interested in your debate, and so if you want to shoot me a note, I have it's info at Barrett Hill. You'll find it all over my website.
Right.
The contact information. Just shoot me a note, and I have a limited amount of energy to go running around. But if you have a public discussion that I could get in on, that'd be great.
I'm actually thinking about making that. We're doing clinics for maybe the NMRA convention in July, having that be one of the clinic topics. Have a discussion debate about that. So get a couple of people to come together and do an interesting debate. Yeah, Seth Newman, who runs Train Control Systems, builds an Arduino based thing called CP Note. We've had that discussion as well, kind of back and forth.
Yeah, I find Seth to be a real energy in the business.
Yeah,
and every time I go to talk to him, he won't look up. He's talking to somebody else. So I have gone to talk to Seth twice as often, at least, as I have actually gotten a word in edgewise. So, but
gentlemen, I hate to do this, but we got to move on here a little bit. Kevin, I can't thank you enough. This has really been fantastic. I've learned more than I thought I would, and thank you so much for being here and sharing your information with us.
Well, and I'm happy to answer anybody. Just use the email on the site and shoot me a note if you want to contact me, and happy to do a phone call after that. So, and that looks like red and white switches.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. So they have the RC plug, and you either plug it into the left or right, and then that would activate the turnout. But that solves Phil's problem with kids touching. But if you put 10,000 volts on this panel, you'd be good.
Hey, Kevin, we have a quick question from YouTube. Do you have a YouTube channel?
I don't. And it's funny, years ago, I did video production. And so I don't have a YouTube channel because I don't have time. There are a few videos, including the one I showed on my site. There's one of Cody at Model Railroader installing a mini cup fascia mount, some other stuff. But I am kicking under my table some nice big light systems that I've gotten to be able to do video, and yet there are none. Between I don't know, over in the corner here, if you can see, is a big pick and place machine, which replaced the one that died in February. So for 2 months I was out of production. And fortunately, I had banked huge amounts of product against the potential for the season. So I was busy running out of I am still running out of product and making new stuff and sending it out the door. So time, what's time? You know, anyway, but I don't have the YouTube channel. I will have some YouTube videos if I can. I have somebody working on improving the website. We've already just discussed how it gets restructured. So good things coming that way. Otherwise, just shoot me a note or, give me a call during business hours, please. But I talk to an awful lot of people. So thanks, Jim, for inviting me.
Hey, thanks for being here. I really do appreciate it. Thanks for taking my telephone call.
How do
All
I
right.
get away from those?
So next time, and the reason I asked my LCC question is next time, John Bate is going to be discussing the NMRA's LCC program. I've been trying to get John or somebody that's really knowledgeable about it to come and talk with us, because frankly, I don't understand it. I'm just not, electronics is just not my forte, as all of you understand. Anyway, he's going to be here. And then we've got Clark Cooning, MMR, who's going to finish up his downtown deco kit. Andy Keeney's going to do his Andy's Op Corner. And Paul Thompson's going to do another quick tip for us. So I hope you'll come back. I hope you enjoyed tonight. I hope you learned something. I know I certainly did. Kevin, thanks again for all your time and your help.